The recruitment officer's mandibles clicked in what I assumed was amusement as she scrolled through the application on her datapad. Commander Vrix of the Galactic Defense Initiative, third longest-serving personnel evaluator in Sector 9, had seen thousands of hopeful recruits waddle, slither, or float through these doors. But this was new. "Let me understand this correctly," Vrix said, her compound eyes reflecting the sterile lighting of the processing center. "Your planet sent you, specifically you, to join the most elite military training program in the galaxy?" The human female sitting across from her nodded once, her expression unreadable behind those peculiar forward-facing eyes. She was small, even by human standards. The file said she barely reached 5 feet in height, with a frame so slight that Vrix worried a strong gust of recycled air might knock her over. "That is correct, Commander. And your name is—" Vrix squinted at the screen. "Maya Reeves?" "Yes, ma'am." Vrix set down the datapad with a soft thunk. In her 17 years of evaluating candidates, she had processed Kralix warriors whose exoskeletons could deflect plasma rounds, Thurian berserkers who could tear through reinforced steel with their bare appendages, and even a Quellan whose toxic skin secretions made them practically untouchable in close combat. But humans? Those strange primates from that backwater death world called Earth? They were rare enough in the initiative. A human female who looked like she might blow away in a light breeze? "Miss Reeves, I mean no disrespect to your species, but are you aware of the physical requirements for this program? The first week alone has a 70% washout rate. Most recruits are, shall we say, more robust in appearance." Maya's lips curved upward slightly. Not quite a smile, but close. "I'm aware, Commander. The training involves live fire exercises, zero-gravity combat simulations, and hand-to-hand combat against opponents who may outweigh you by several hundred pounds. Some of them have natural weapons, claws, fangs, armor plating." "I read the brochure, ma'am." Vrix's antennae twitched with irritation. Humans and their infuriating confidence. Every species thought they were special, but humans took it to another level entirely. They had barely achieved faster-than-light travel 2 decades ago, yet acted like they owned the galaxy. "Very well," Vrix said, mandibles clicking in a pattern that her species used to indicate resigned acceptance. "Report to Barracks 12 at 0600 tomorrow. Try not to get yourself killed on the first day. The paperwork is absolutely dreadful." Staff Sergeant Coro was having a terrible morning. The Bronthan had woken up with a pulled muscle in his secondary shoulder. His breakfast rations had been cold, and now, standing before his new batch of recruits, he spotted the human. The tiny human. The female human who looked like she might faint if someone spoke too loudly, near her. "Great," he muttered to his assistant, Lieutenant Fex. Another diplomatic assignment, trying to prove something. Fex, a spindly Veskarian with 4 arms and perpetually nervous energy, nodded sympathetically. "Should we file the incident report now, or wait until after she gets hurt?" "After. More authentic that way." Coro stepped forward, his massive form casting shadows across half the assembled recruits. At 7 feet tall and built like a mobile weapons platform, he had the look of someone who could bench press a small shuttle. His voice, when he spoke, rattled the windows. "Attention! You are now the property of the Galactic Defense Initiative. For the next 12 weeks, you will eat when I say eat, sleep when I say sleep, and breathe when I give you permission. Is that understood?" A chorus of affirmatives echoed back. Some shouted, some growled. One sort of bubbled enthusiastically. "I can't hear you." "Yes, Sergeant." "Better. Now, we are going to start with something simple. A 5-mile run around the compound, in full gear. Anyone who finishes in under 40 minutes gets breakfast. Anyone who doesn't can watch the rest of us eat. Fall in. The recruits scrambled to the equipment station, grabbing the 40-pound packs that constituted standard training gear. Koro watched with satisfaction as several of the bulkier candidates grunted under the weight. The equipment was deliberately heavy, designed to push recruits beyond their comfort zones. Then he noticed Maya. The human had shouldered her pack without so much as a grimace, adjusting the straps with practiced efficiency. She caught his gaze and had the audacity to raise one eyebrow, as if asking whether there was a problem. "Something funny, recruit?" "No, Sergeant." "You think you can handle this?" "Yes, Sergeant." "We'll see. Move out." The first mile was always the easiest. Koro jogged alongside the formation, noting who was already struggling and who had paced themselves properly. A large Draxian was pulling ahead, his 6 legs giving him a natural advantage on flat terrain. Several others clustered in the middle of the pack, maintaining a steady rhythm. And there, keeping perfect pace about 3/4 back, was Maya. By mile 2, the formation had spread out considerably. The Draxian still led, but his breathing had become labored. Several recruits had already fallen behind, their species' physiology ill-suited for sustained endurance. One poor Kellen had stopped entirely, his gelatinous body quivering with exhaustion. Maya had moved up to the middle of the pack. "Vex," Koro said into his comm, "are you seeing this?" "The human?" "Yeah. Weird, right? She looks like she's barely trying." Mile 3 saw the first dropouts. A Kralix warrior, all bulk and aggression, stumbled to a halt with his breathing apparatus wheezing. The Draxian leader had slowed considerably, his earlier sprint costing him dearly. Maya passed him without breaking stride. By mile 4, only 12 recruits remained in the race for breakfast. Maya had positioned herself in 3rd place, running with mechanical efficiency behind a Thurian and a Veskarian. Her breathing was controlled, her pace steady. If she was tired, she showed no sign of it. Koro found himself jogging faster to keep up with the front runners. Something about the human bothered him, though he couldn't quite articulate what. She moved with a grace that seemed at odds with her fragile appearance, each footfall placed with precision. The final mile separated the contenders from the pretenders. The Thurian, in 1st place, was practically stumbling now, his massive muscles finally betraying him. The Veskarian had fallen back, 3 of his 4 arms hanging limply. Maya accelerated. It wasn't a dramatic sprint or a desperate lunge. She simply increased her pace with the smooth inevitability of a shuttle entering orbit, flowing past the Veskarian, then the Thurian, her slight form suddenly seeming less delicate and more efficient. By the time she crossed the finish line, she was a full 30 seconds ahead of 2nd place, and her breathing had barely changed. She stopped, hands on her hips, and tilted her head up at Koro. "What time, Sergeant?" Koro checked his chronometer, then checked it again, certain he'd misread it. 32 minutes, 17 seconds. "Is that good enough for breakfast, sir?" Behind her, the Thurian collapsed in a heap. The Veskarian crossed the line and immediately vomited. Other recruits were scattered across the course in various states of distress. "Yeah," Koro said slowly. "Yeah, that'll do." The mess hall was quiet that evening, filled with exhausted recruits nursing sore muscles and bruised egos. Maya sat alone at a corner table, methodically working through her meal ration. She'd learned early in her military career that eating alone prevented uncomfortable questions. "Is this seat taken?" She looked up to find the Thurian from the run, a massive wall of muscle and orange fur named Torv. His expression was difficult to read behind his prominent snout, but his body language suggested curiosity rather than aggression. "Help yourself." Torv settled onto the bench, which creaked alarmingly under his weight. For a long moment, he simply stared at her, his small eyes narrowed in concentration. "You're not enhanced, are you? No cybernetics? No gene mods?" "Nope. Standard issue human." "But you're so small." Maya took a sip of water, considering her response. She'd had this conversation before, on Earth, and it never got less tiresome. "Size isn't everything." "Clearly. I've been training for this my whole life. My family has produced warriors for 6 generations. And you just," he gestured vaguely, "ran past me like I was standing still. You were standing still. Near the end there." "That's not the point." Torv's fur bristled with frustration. "How did you do it?" "Practice, discipline, and understanding that endurance isn't about strength. It's about efficiency." "Efficiency," Torv repeated, testing the word. "We have a saying on my world. The strong survive. Simple. Clear. We have a different one on mine. It's not the size of the dog in the fight. It's the size of the fight in the dog." Torv's ears twitched. "What is a dog?" "A predator. Small compared to most prey animals, but they hunt in packs and never give up. Humans domesticated them about 15,000 years ago." "You domesticated predators?" "Oh, that's not even the weird part." Maya finished her meal and stood. "Get some rest, Torv. Tomorrow's going to be harder." "How do you know?" She smiled, a strange expression that showed her small, flat teeth. On most species, such a display was a sign of submission or nervousness. On humans, Torv was beginning to realize it meant something else entirely. Because it's always harder. Day 3 brought hand-to-hand combat training, and Koro's mood had not improved. The human had continued to perform at levels that defied her appearance, excelling at every physical test thrown her way. Worse, she'd started attracting attention from other recruits. He'd overheard them talking about her in the barracks, speculating about secret human abilities or hidden augmentations. "Today," he announced to the assembled trainees, "we begin combat training. You will be paired with opponents of similar skill levels and size classes. The objective is not to injure each other, but to demonstrate control and technique. The match ends when one participant submits or is rendered unable to continue." He began calling out pairings, matching recruits based on the preliminary assessments from the first 2 days. The Draxian, with another multi-limbed species. A pair of Quellan, who would presumably grapple like aggressive puddings. 2 Kralix warriors who looked eager to settle some sort of territorial dispute. "Reeves, Maya, you're with Zendak." A collective intake of breath rippled through the formation. Zendak was a legend, even among recruits. The Bronthan had joined the training program 3 times, washing out each time in the final week for various disciplinary reasons. But his combat skills? Unquestioned. At 8 feet tall and covered in natural armor plating, he was essentially a biological tank. Maya stepped onto the training mat without hesitation. Across from her, Zendak loomed, his tusks gleaming in the overhead lights. "Sergeant," Zendak rumbled, his voice like gravel in a blender. "This is not a fair match." "Life isn't fair, recruit. Begin when ready." Zendak shifted his weight, clearly uncomfortable. "I could hurt her." "Then don't. This is a training exercise, not a death match. Control is part of combat." The big Bronthan looked down at Maya, his expression softening slightly. "Human, you should withdraw. There is no shame in acknowledging a mismatch." Maya rolled her shoulders, loosening up. "I appreciate the concern, but I'm good. Whenever you're ready." "I will be Gentle. Don't! Zendak moved with surprising speed for his size, reaching out with one massive hand to grab Maya's shoulder. It was meant to be a restraining hold, nothing more. A way to end the match quickly and painlessly. His hand closed on empty air. Maya had simply stepped aside, her movement so economical that it barely registered as motion. She was suddenly behind him, her hand pressed against his lower back. "Point 1, she said calmly. Zendak spun, more aggressive now. His pride stung. He launched a series of strikes, each one powerful enough to dent metal. Maya flowed around them like water, never quite where his fists landed, always just out of reach. It was mesmerizing to watch. Where Zendak represented raw power, Maya embodied something different. Precision, anticipation, the ability to be exactly where she needed to be, and nowhere else. Point 2. Her foot tapped his knee, not hard enough to hurt, but the implication was clear. She could have taken the joint if she'd wanted. Zendak roared, abandoning technique for pure aggression. He charged, intending to simply bowl her over with his superior mass. Maya dropped low, and suddenly Zendak was airborne, his own momentum used against him. He hit the mat with a thunderous crash that rattled the entire facility. Before he could recover, Maya had his arm in a lock, her knee pressed against his neck. "Submit," she said quietly. Zendak tapped the mat 3 times. The watching recruits erupted in shocked chatter. Fex dropped his datapad. Even Koro found his mandibles hanging open in surprise. Maya released Zendak and helped him to his feet with the same casual efficiency she'd used to defeat him. "You're strong," she told him, "but you telegraph your moves. Commit less. Observe more." Zendak stared at her, his small eyes wide. Then, slowly, he began to laugh. Deep, booming guffaws that made his armor plates rattle. "By the ancestors, you're terrifying, little human." "Thanks, I think." Koro stepped forward, his mind racing. "Reeves, where did you learn to fight like that?" "Earth, Sergeant. I trained in several martial arts from a young age. Judo, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Krav Maga, Muay Thai. Humans have been fighting each other for our entire history. We've gotten pretty good at it. Against other humans your size. Against humans all sizes, actually. Against multiple opponents, with weapons and without. Sometimes when exhausted, injured, or disadvantaged." She met his gaze steadily. "Sergeant, humanity earned its place in the galaxy by surviving a planet that was actively trying to kill us. We fought predators, diseases, environmental disasters, and each other for hundreds of thousands of years. Size? Size is just another problem to solve." Koro felt something shift in his understanding. This wasn't a delicate diplomat playing at soldier. This was a weapon shaped by millions of years of evolutionary pressure, wrapped in an unassuming package. "Pair up for next round," he barked, more harshly than intended. "And somebody get Zendak an ice pack for his ego." By week 2, Maya had become something of a phenomenon in the training company. The initial skepticism had transformed into wary respect, then open admiration. Recruits who had initially dismissed her now sought her advice on technique and strategy. The obstacle course on day 12 provided the most dramatic demonstration yet. The course was designed to test every aspect of physical capability. Climbing walls, rope traverses, underwater sections, a zero-gravity segment, and finally, a simulated combat scenario at the end. The record time, set 3 years ago by a champion Thurian athlete, was 18 minutes and 43 seconds. Maya stood at the starting line alongside Torv, who had become something of a friend over the past week, and a confident Kralix named Grix, who had been talking loudly about breaking the record. 50 credits, says the human doesn't even finish, Grix muttered to another recruit. You're on, Torv responded immediately. Another 50, says she beats your time. Begin! The first obstacle was a 20-foot wall, smooth and vertical. Grix attacked it with pure strength, his claws finding purchase in microscopic imperfections. Torv used his powerful legs to leap, grabbing the top and hauling himself up. Maya ran at the wall, planted one foot about halfway up, and used the momentum to propel herself upward. Her fingers caught the lip, and she pulled herself over in one smooth motion. She was over before Grix. The rope traverse was next, a 100-foot gap over a pit filled with cold water. Most recruits hand-over-handed across, using their arms for the entire journey. Maya hooked one leg over the rope and scooted across upside down, using her legs as much as her arms, distributing the effort. She was across and moving before the others reached the midpoint. The underwater section required recruits to navigate a submerged tunnel, approximately 30 meters long. Many species struggled here, their respiratory systems ill-suited for breath-holding. Maya dove in and didn't surface until she reached the other end, her human physiology allowing her to hold her breath for over 2 minutes when necessary. Evolution on a water-covered planet had its advantages. The zero-gravity segment confused many recruits, their proprioception failing them in the absence of up or down. Maya moved through it like she'd been born in space, using small pushes and pulls to navigate the three-dimensional maze with minimal wasted motion. Finally, the combat simulation. 5 automated drones, each programmed to engage with varying levels of aggression. Most recruits treated this as an endurance test, simply weathering the attacks until time expired. Maya moved through them like a ghost, each drone neutralized with surgical precision. Grab, twist, disable. Move to the next. No wasted energy, no unnecessary movements. The whole sequence took less than 40 seconds. She crossed the finish line, barely breathing hard. Koro checked his chronometer, then showed it to Fex, who checked his own device to confirm. 14 minutes, 52 seconds, Fex whispered. She beat the record by almost 4 minutes. Impossible, Grix said, staring at the scoreboard where Maya's time now glowed at the top. That's impossible. Clearly not, Torv said cheerfully. You owe me 100 credits. That evening, Koro found himself in Commander Vrix's office, explaining the situation. She's not just good, he said, pacing in front of the desk. She's exceptional. In 2 weeks, she's outperformed recruits who have been training their entire lives. The other trainees are starting to look to her for leadership, even though she never asks for it. Vrix's antennae swayed thoughtfully. And you're concerned because? Because I don't understand it. She should be struggling. She should be average at best. Instead, she's making our top recruits look like amateurs. Perhaps our assumptions about humans were incorrect. Or perhaps she's an outlier. Maybe we just happen to get Earth's equivalent of a super soldier, and we're drawing wrong conclusions about the species as a whole. Vrix pulled up Maya's file on her screen. According to her records, she was selected through standard military channels on Earth. No special forces background, no elite family lineage. She scored well on their entrance exams and volunteered for the exchange program. By their standards, she is simply a competent soldier. Koro felt his secondary stomach clench. If she's average, I don't want to meet exceptional. The humans have a saying, apparently. Steel sharpens steel. Perhaps Recruit Reeves is exactly what this program needs. A reminder that the deadliest weapon is not always the most obvious one. As if on cue, an alert flashed on Vrix's screen. Security footage from the recreation area. Koro leaned forward to look. Maya was teaching an impromptu class on hand-to-hand combat to nearly 20 interested recruits. Her movements were slow and deliberate as she demonstrated a throw on Zendak, who had apparently volunteered to be the practice dummy. Again. "She's going to revolutionize our combat training," Vrix observed, "whether she intends to or not." Koro watched as Maya helped Zendak back to his feet, explaining something about leverage and center of gravity. The big Bronthan nodded enthusiastically, then attempted the throw himself on a volunteering Torv. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. "I've been doing this job for 17 years, Koro said quietly. "Thought I'd seen everything. Then a 5-foot-tall human shows up and makes me question everything I know about combat effectiveness. Welcome to the new galaxy, Sergeant. One where the most dangerous predator might just look like prey." Week 4 brought the survival training exercise, and Command had decided to make things interesting. 20 recruits would be dropped into a simulated hostile environment on the station's training deck, a massive biodome that could replicate conditions from dozens of different worlds. They would have minimal supplies, no communication devices, and 72 hours to reach the extraction point 15 kilometers away. Oh, and there would be hunters. "The hunters are advanced combat drones," Koro explained to the assembled group, "programmed with adaptive learning algorithms. They will track you, test you, and if they tag you 3 times, you fail the exercise. You'll be issued a standard survival pack, 1 canteen of water, and a non-lethal pulse weapon with 3 charges. Questions?" A Veskarian recruit raised 2 of his 4 hands. "Are we allowed to work together?" "The scenario doesn't prohibit cooperation, but remember, you're all competing for ranking scores. How you balance teamwork versus individual achievement is part of the test." Maya checked her survival pack methodically. Thermal blanket, basic medical supplies, fire starter, compass, protein bars. Standard issue. She'd trained in worse conditions with less equipment back on Earth. "Nervous?" Torv asked, adjusting his own pack. "Always am before an operation. Nerves keep you sharp." "You call this an operation? It's training." Maya gave him that unsettling human smile. "Everything's training until it isn't. Treat it like the real thing, and the real thing feels like training. More human wisdom? Nah, that one's just me." The biodome they were dropped into resembled a dense jungle, the kind of environment where visibility dropped to mere meters and every shadow could hide a threat. The humidity hit like a physical force, and within minutes, most recruits were already struggling with the heat. Maya immediately moved off the main path, selecting a game trail that ran parallel to the direct route. Torv followed, along with Zendak and 3 others who had learned to trust her instincts. "Why not the straight path?" asked a Quelon named Rip, his gelatinous body already glistening with condensation. "Because it's obvious," Maya replied, pushing aside a large frond. "The drones will expect us to take the most direct route. We move parallel, stay in cover, and only cross open ground when necessary." "That will take longer," Grix complained. The Kralix had reluctantly joined their group after his solo sprint on day 1 had resulted in all 3 tags within the first hour. "Slow is smooth, smooth is fast," Earth military saying. Humans have a lot of sayings. We've had a lot of time to come up with them. The first night fell quickly in the artificial jungle. Most groups had stopped to make camp, lighting fires and settling in. Maya kept her group moving, using the darkness as cover. "We should rest," Zendak rumbled. "Some of us are not built for extended exertion in this heat." Maya paused, considering. The big Bronthan was right. Pushing too hard would leave them vulnerable. "Okay, cold camp, no fire. 2-hour watches. I'll take first shift. They settled into a small depression surrounded by thick vegetation, the natural terrain providing concealment from above. Maya positioned herself where she could observe multiple approach angles, her pulse weapon within easy reach. 2 hours later, she woke Torv for his watch without incident. 2 hours after that, during Zendak's shift, the first drone attacked. It came in fast and low, its sensors sweeping the area in infrared. Zendak barely had time to shout a warning before it tagged him once, the simulation laser leaving a glowing mark on his shoulder. Maya was moving before she was fully awake, rolling out of her sleeping position and coming up in a crouch. The drone was already repositioning for another pass. "Spread out," she commanded. "Don't cluster." The drone's adaptive algorithms made it formidable. It learned from each engagement, adjusting its tactics based on its opponent's responses. Most recruits had tried to shoot it, wasting their limited charges on a target designed to dodge energy weapons. Maya didn't shoot. She watched. The drone favored attack runs from elevated positions, diving down on targets before pulling up at the last second. It avoided dense vegetation, where its sensors might be confused by multiple heat signatures. And it always repositioned to the left after an attack run. Zendak, when it comes back, fall down, play dead. What? Trust me. The drone swooped in again, targeting the largest heat signature. Zendak dropped like his legs had been cut out from under him, his massive body hitting the ground with a crash that seemed far too dramatic to be real. The drone paused, hovering, its sensors trying to determine if the target was actually neutralized. A real opponent wouldn't wait. A training program, however, might hesitate to waste a tag on an already defeated enemy. Maya used that hesitation. She'd climbed into the surrounding vegetation while the drone was focused on Zendak, positioning herself directly in its predicted repositioning path. When it banked left, exactly as anticipated, she dropped onto it from above. Her weight wasn't enough to bring it down, but it didn't need to be. She'd wrapped her thermal blanket around its primary sensor array, blinding it. The drone immediately went into an emergency ascent protocol, trying to climb above the obstruction. Maya rode it up about 20 feet, then dropped, tucking and rolling to absorb the impact. The drone, now effectively blind and unable to follow its primary directive, automatically returned to its maintenance station for repair. The group stared at her in silence. "Did you just," Torv began, "defeat a combat drone with a blanket?" "The blanket helped. Mostly I defeated it with observation and basic physics." She retrieved her blanket from where it had fallen, shaking off leaves. "Come on. It'll report our position when it gets back. We need to move." By day 2, word had spread through the exercise. The human had neutralized 3 drones using increasingly creative methods. The second one she'd lured into a stream, shorting its hover systems with water. The third she'd trapped under a deadfall, using leverage and patience to tip a log onto it while it was distracted by Grix making noise on the other side. Other groups started seeking her out, either to join forces or to learn her methods. By the evening of the second day, Maya found herself leading a coalition of nearly 15 recruits, all moving in coordinated fashion toward the extraction point. Lieutenant Fex watched the exercise from the control center, his 4 hands alternating between taking notes and gesturing in disbelief. "She's formed an army," he said to Koro. "She's actually organized them into squads with specialized roles. The Draxians are scouts. The Quellan are providing reconnaissance because they can squeeze through tight spaces. And she's got the heavy hitters, like Zendak, positioned as a rear guard." Koro studied the tracking data. "How many drones has her group neutralized?" 11, out of 15 total deployed. and only 3 recruits in her coalition have been eliminated. The other groups? Vex pulled up comparative data. 47 recruits failed, most within the first day. She's not even supposed to have tactical training. Her file says basic infantry, not officer candidate school. Maybe humans don't draw that distinction. Or maybe, Vex suggested, leadership isn't about training, it's about competence earning trust. On the screen, Maya's group approached a narrow ravine, the final major obstacle before the extraction point. The remaining 4 drones had formed a coordinated defensive position, their adaptive algorithms having learned to work together after observing the humans' pack tactics. "This should be interesting," Koro muttered. Maya studied the ravine through a gap in the foliage. 4 drones, positioned at corners to provide overlapping fields of fire. Any attempt to cross would result in multiple tags from multiple angles. It was a perfect kill zone. "We could wait them out," Torv suggested. "We have 12 hours before extraction window closes." "They're not programmed to leave. They'll stay until we attempt to cross or time expires." Maya turned to the assembled recruits. "Anyone have charges left on their pulse weapons?" 5 hands, claws, or appendages went up. "Okay, here's what we're going to do. Grix, Rip, Vex, you 3 are going to provide suppressing fire from this position. You won't hit them, but you'll keep their attention focused forward. Torv, Zendak, you're with me. We're going around." "Around where?" Zendak rumbled. "The ravine extends 2 kilometers in either direction." "Not around the ravine. Through it. Underwater." She pointed to where the stream feeding the ravine cut through the rock face. It was narrow, barely wide enough for a human, and disappeared into darkness beneath the stone. "You're insane," Grix said flatly. "That could go anywhere, could collapse, could have no exit, could also bypass the drones entirely. Torv, you're the best swimmer besides me. Zendak, you can hold your breath longer than anyone here. We go through, we come up behind their position, we neutralize them from the rear." "And if you don't come up?" asked a Viscarian. "Then you wait until the suppressing fire runs out of charges, and you surrender with dignity. But I'm pretty confident about this." "Based on what?" Maya grinned. "I can see light in the water. Means there's an opening. Probably small, probably tight, but there." Torv groaned. "I'm going to die following a tiny human through underwater caves." "Probably not. Your species has excellent low-light vision, and you're stronger than me. If I get stuck, you can pull me through." "That's not reassuring." "It wasn't meant to be. Let's move." The water was cold and dark, the current stronger than it had appeared from above. Maya pulled herself forward using handholds in the rock, her human eyes quickly adjusting to the dim light filtering through from somewhere ahead. Behind her, she could feel Torv's presence, his bulk making the tight passage even tighter. The gap narrowed, then narrowed again. For a moment, Maya genuinely questioned her decision. Then she saw it, a shaft of light ahead, and pushed forward with renewed determination. They surfaced in a pool behind the drone positions, gasping and coughing. Zendak emerged last, his armor plates scraping against stone. "Never again," Torv wheezed. "Never, ever again." "Noted. Now let's finish this." The drones were focused forward, their sensors pointed toward the expected attack. Maya circled to the nearest one, moving with the patient silence of a predator. When she was close enough, she simply reached up and powered it down using the manual override switch on its undercarriage. It wasn't elegant, but it worked. 1 down, 3 to go. Torv took the second, mimicking Maya's approach with surprising grace. Zendak, unable to move silently, simply grabbed the 3rd drone mid-hover and crushed its motor housing with his bare hands. The fourth attempted to flee, belatedly recognizing the tactical disaster, but Maya's pulse weapon caught it square in the main processor. "Suppressing fire! Stand down!" she called across the ravine. "Path is clear." The recruits emerged from hiding, staring at the disabled drones with something approaching reverence. "You did it," Grix said, his usual hostility replaced with grudging respect. "You actually did it." "We did it," Maya corrected. "Everyone played their part. Now let's get to extraction before Command decides to throw something else at us." The extraction point was a cleared zone with a shuttle waiting. As Maya's group emerged from the jungle, they found Commander Vrix and Sergeant Koro waiting personally, an unusual honor. "Recruit Reeves," Vrix said, her mandibles clicking in what might have been approval. "Your performance has been remarkable." "Thank you, Commander. My team performed excellently." "Your team. Interesting choice of words. You're aware this was an individual assessment?" "Yes, ma'am. But survival is rarely individual. We're stronger together." Koro stepped forward, his expression unreadable. "You neutralized 11 combat drones, organized 15 recruits from 7 different species into an effective unit, and completed the course in 46 hours. That's a new record, by 18 hours. The previous record holder tried to do it alone, didn't they?" "How did you know?" "Because going alone is always slower when you have to cover your own back, scout your own path, and rest on your own watch. Humans learned that lesson about 1,000,000 years ago, when we figured out pack hunting." Vrix's antenna twitched, with something that might have been amusement. "The instructors have been evaluating the footage from your exercises. They want to incorporate your methods into the standard curriculum." "Happy to help, ma'am." "They also want to know where you learned tactical command. Your file says infantry, but you organized that operation like a veteran officer." Maya considered her answer carefully. "Commander, every human who serves in the military learns basic small unit tactics. We have to. Our homeworld had thousands of competing nations for most of our history. Millions of soldiers, all learning from each other's successes and failures. By the time we unified and reached the stars, we had refined warfare into something of an art form. What you saw wasn't special training. It was just application of lessons that humanity paid for in blood over thousands of years." The assembled recruits had gone quiet, listening. Even Koro seemed subdued. "Your planet fought itself for thousands of years?" Torv asked quietly. "Still fighting, in some places. Humans are really good at 3 things: surviving, adapting, and unfortunately, combat. We turned all 3 into sciences." Zendak rumbled thoughtfully. "When your world applied for Galactic Initiative membership, the report said you were a peaceful species seeking to join the larger community. We are peaceful. Now. Mostly. Because we learned what happens when we're not. Every human alive today carries genetic memory of 10,000 generations who survived things that would have destroyed most species. We remember the lessons, even when we don't remember learning them." Vrix clicked her mandibles in a pattern that indicated deep thought. "Reeves, how would you feel about a transfer after basic training completes?" "Transfer to where, Commander?" "Instructor cadre. We need people who can teach these lessons you're talking about. Show other species how to think like humans when it comes to survival and tactics." Maya looked at the recruits gathered around her, representatives from dozens of worlds, all watching with varying expressions of respect, curiosity, and yes, a little fear. "I'd be honored, ma'am. On one condition." "Which is?" "That we don't just teach them to think like humans. We teach them to think like whatever their species' strengths are. Humans succeed because we're adaptable, and we never give up. But Torv's people are stronger. Grix's species has natural weapons. Zendak's people have armor. The lesson isn't to be human. The lesson is to know what you are and use every advantage you have. Koro felt something shift in his understanding, a fundamental realization about what this small human represented. Not superiority, but a different perspective. One forged in a crucible that most species had never experienced. "Sergeant," Vrix said formally, "I believe we've found our new junior combat instructor." "Agreed, Commander." Maya smiled. That uniquely human expression that her fellow recruits had learned meant something between amusement and determination. "Does this mean I still have to finish basic training?" "Oh, absolutely," Koro said with feeling. 8 more weeks. And now that I know what you're capable of, I'm going to make them count." "Looking forward to it, Sergeant." The final week of basic training arrived with a ceremony that had become tradition over the decades. The graduation exercise, a final test that combined everything learned over the previous 12 weeks into one comprehensive challenge. Recruits would face combat scenarios, survival situations, tactical problems, and ethical dilemmas, all compressed into 72 hours of controlled chaos. Maya stood in formation with her graduating class, 62 recruits who had survived the attrition that claimed over half of the original group. She wasn't the top-ranked graduate. That honor belonged to Torv, whose massive improvements over the course had been extraordinary. She wasn't the strongest. That was still Zendak. Wasn't the fastest. A Draxian named Clix held that distinction. But when Koro called her name to receive her graduation certificate, the entire formation erupted in cheers. Not the polite applause typically afforded to graduates, but genuine enthusiasm from 61 individuals who had learned to respect the small human who proved that appearances could be devastatingly deceiving. "Speech," someone called. Others took up the cry. Maya looked to Koro, who shrugged in a very human gesture he'd apparently picked up. "Your audience awaits, instructor." She stepped forward, suddenly aware of dozens of eyes, visual sensors, and other sensory organs focused on her. "I'm not good at speeches," she began. "Humans have a saying, actions speak louder than words. And what I've seen over these 12 weeks is that every single one of you is capable of things you didn't believe possible when you started. Torv thought he couldn't run. Zendak thought his strength was his only weapon. Grix thought working with others was weakness." She paused, meeting eyes across the formation. "You all proved yourselves wrong. Not because you became human, but because you became more of what you already were. Better versions of your own potential. That's what this program is really about. Not making soldiers, making the best possible version of whatever warrior lives inside each of us. The galaxy is big and dangerous, and full of things that want to hurt us. But standing here, looking at all of you, I'm not worried. Because if there's one thing I've learned in 12 weeks, it's that we're stronger together than anything the universe can throw at us. Humans have a phrase for people who've been through combat together. We call them family. And that's what you are to me now. All of you. Family." The cheers that followed were deafening, a cacophony of different species, all expressing the same emotion. Pride, relief, joy, and the knowledge that they had earned something that couldn't be taken away. Later, as the graduation reception wound down, Vrix found Maya standing alone on an observation deck, watching the stars. "Contemplating your future, Instructor Reeves?" "Just thinking about home, Commander. Wondering if they know what they sent out here." "What did they send?" A reminder, maybe, that humanity didn't reach the stars by being the biggest or the strongest or the fastest. We got here by being too stubborn to quit, too curious to stay home, and too adaptable to let anything stop us. Some species might find that intimidating. Maya turned, that smile playing at her lips again. Good. Let them be intimidated. Let them wonder what else humans can do. Because the truth is, Commander, I'm not special. I'm just what happens when you take a species that evolved by surviving everything their planet could throw at them and give them a universe to explore. I believe you just contradicted your graduation speech about not being scary. I said we're family. Family can be scary and supportive at the same time. Ask any human with siblings. Vrix's antennae swayed with genuine amusement. The galaxy is not ready for humanity, is it? Probably not. But that's okay. We're patient. We've got time. And in the meantime, I've got 62 new family members to look after and a whole new batch of recruits arriving next month who need to learn that size doesn't matter nearly as much as heart. Any predictions on how they'll respond to you? Maya laughed, a sound that Vrix had learned to associate with impending chaos. Oh, they'll underestimate me completely. Think I'm too small, too weak, too delicate, right up until I prove them wrong. And then? And then they'll learn what every human child learns eventually. That the most dangerous thing in any room isn't always the biggest or the loudest. Sometimes it's the quiet one in the corner who's been paying attention the whole time. Vrix watched the small human return her gaze to the stars, this representative of a species that had fought its way up from a death world to stand among the galactic community. And for the first time in her long career, she felt something close to pity for any hostile force that might one day face humanity in genuine combat. Because if Maya Reeves was average by human standards, what did exceptional look like? She decided she was happier not knowing. 3 months later, Sergeant Koro stood before a new batch of recruits, his assistant Fex beside him taking notes. The formation included the usual mix of species, all eager and nervous in equal measure. And standing off to the side, wearing the instructor's insignia, was Maya Reeves, watching with that patient smile that Koro had learned meant she was already 3 steps ahead of everyone else. "Attention!" Koro bellowed. "You are now the property of the Galactic Defense Initiative, and I have the pleasure of introducing your hand-to-hand combat instructor. Instructor Reeves, if you please." Maya stepped forward, and Koro watched with satisfaction as the recruits sized her up. Too small, too delicate. Clearly a mistake. They'd learn. They always did. "Good morning," Maya said pleasantly. "I need a volunteer for a demonstration, someone confident in their combat abilities. Anyone?" A massive Thurian stepped forward, easily twice her size and 3 times her weight. "I volunteer, instructor." "Excellent. What's your name?" "Brax, instructor." "Brax, I want you to try to grab me. Use whatever technique you think best." Brax looked uncertain. "I don't want to hurt you, instructor." Maya's smile widened. "Trust me, Brax. That won't be a problem." Koro settled in to watch the show. Beside him, Fex was already recording, knowing that this footage would become legendary among future classes. Some lessons, after all, needed to be learned the hard way. And Maya Reeves was an excellent teacher.